So we begin the Awhi sequence by inviting everyone into child's pose. So bringing the knees wide to the edges of the mat, the toes come to touch, the hips sink back to the heels. This marks the beginning of the integration phase of the sequence. We hold child's pose anywhere from, I would say, 5 to 8 or more cycles of breath. From here, we step into downward facing dog, and then inviting scorpion pose, starting on the right side. So we open up through the hips by bending at the knee, stacking the hips. Stay there for about 3 to 5 breaths, and then take the same pose, scorpion, on the left side. Anywhere from 3 to 5, even to 8 breaths, depending on the length of the class and your objective. From scorpion, we walk to the top of the mat to come into ragdoll. Ragdoll is a forward fold in which we grab opposite elbows, lengthening through the spine, making sure you're hinging at the hips. Still early days, so invite practitioners to bend the knees, rest the chest on the thighs if needed. We release the bind and slowly roll to stand, coming into Tadasana or mountain pose, Daumonga. Here we begin the sun salutation A part of the sequence, which we inhale to rise, exhale, forward fold. Halfway lift, inhale. High plank, we step back for the first round and hold. The step back is on an exhale. Hold here for 3 to 5 breaths, maybe longer, giving cues for high plank, and then invite everyone to drop to their knees, slowly lower all the way to the mat, elbows hugging in for baby cobra on an inhale. Downward facing dog, exhale. Inhale, lift the heels, bend the knees on an exhale, hop, step, jump, walk to the top of the mat. Halfway lift on an inhale, fold to exhale. Tadasana, inhale, straight through to the second side, now in flow, exhale, forward fold. Halfway lift is an inhale. High to low plank is an exhale, so you ride it straight down all the way to the belly or halfway, coming up for upward facing dog. That's an inhale. Downward facing dog, exhale. Heels lift on an inhale, knees bend on an exhale. On a no breath, hop, step, walk, top of mat, halfway lift, inhale, fold, exhale. Root to rise on an inhale. Third round now in flow, forward fold, exhale. Halfway lift, inhale. High to low plank or Chaturanga Dandasana is the exhale. Heart lifts, up dog or cobra, inhale. Downward facing dog, exhale. Heels lift, knees bend, hop or step to the top of the mat. Half lift, inhale, nice long spine. Fold. Chair pose. This marks sun B, sun salutation B part of the sequence. We begin in chair pose, holding anywhere from 3 to 5 to 8 breaths. Up to you. We've got options for the arms. They don't need to be straight up. You can bend them at cactus. You can grab opposite elbow or shoulders. So that's a way of modifying the pose. Another modification is to bring the toes together, heels to separate. Same thing, options for arms. With the feet together, you're squeezing the thighs together, as well as the ankles. Sitting deep, we fold on an exhale. Halfway lift, inhale. Chaturanga Dandasana, exhale. Upward facing dog on an inhale. Downward facing dog, exhale. Right heel lifts. Tiger curl, knee to nose, and then step the foot at the top of the mat for Warrior One, rising on an inhale. In Warrior One, the back foot turns 45 degrees. You want to have your hips square to the front of the mat, so a modification is to invite students to widen the gap between the feet so that they're on train tracks, not a tightrope. This gives more stability and allows the hips to open towards the front of the room. We hold the first round of Warrior One for 3 to 5 breaths, and on an exhale transition to Warrior Two. Back foot turns 90 degrees or parallel to the back of the mat. Front knee remains bent, but you want to make sure it's externally rotating away from the body. So make sure that the student's knee is not collapsing in. Shoulders are soft. Lift up through the pelvic floor so the core is engaged. We hold the first round of Warrior Two for 3 to 5 breaths. Inhale, we reverse our warrior, 1 breath, and then high to low plank is an exhale. Inhale, up dog, downward facing dog. So it's like a half sun salutation in between each side. We call that a vinyasa. Left side now, knee to nose, Warrior One. Rise on an inhale, hold, first round, 3 to 5 breaths. Really pressing through the knife edge blade of the back foot, making sure that front knee is not collapsing in. We endeavor for that back leg to be straight. Exhale, Warrior Two. Virabhadrasana 2. Holding for 3 to 5 breaths on the first round. Inhale, reverse your warrior. Vinyasa, high to low plank. Up dog on an in breath, down dog on an out breath. That doesn't really ever change. Lift the heels on an inhale, bend the knees, exhale, travel to the top, halfway lift, inhale, fold, exhale, chair pose, second round. Just here for 1 breath this time, so fold forward on an exhale, half lift, inhale, vinyasa. Option to jump back straight into Chaturanga Dandasana with the elbows bent. Right side, Warrior One, inhale, rise. Warrior Two, exhale. Inhale, reverse, vinyasa. High to low plank. Ride it down on an exhale. Inhale, sweep forward. Downward facing dog, exhale. Left side, Warrior One. Inhale to rise. Warrior Two, exhale. Inhale, reverse. Chaturanga, high to low plank, exhale. Inhale, up dog. Downward facing dog, exhale. Third round, now moving in flow with your own breath. Inhale, Warrior One. Warrior Two, exhale. Reverse, inhale. High to low plank, exhale. Up dog, inhale. Exhale, downward facing dog. left side. Inhale, warrior one. Warrior two, exhale. Inhale, reverse. Chaturanga, exhale. Up dog or maybe even cobra, inhale. Down dog, exhale. Here we enter the crescent lunge series portion of the flow. So right foot steps up, rise, inhale, crescent lunge. Exhale, hands to heart center. We lean forward and then twist. Left elbow hooks over right knee for the first round. So we twist towards the right. Option to extend the wings. Also an option to drop that back left knee if needed for more stability. Inhale back to crescent lunge. Arrowhead, exhale. We hold each of these poses anywhere from 3 to 5 breaths. There's an option to drop the back knee, lengthening out of the waist. Chest is forward and bright. We bring our eyes to the horizon, lift off into aeroplane. That's usually on an exhale. Hold an aeroplane or Dakasana for 3 to 5 breaths. Exhale into warrior two. Inhale, reverse, side angle, exhale. Option to bring the right arm onto the thigh, or see if you can use the arm as a leverage to push the thigh away. We want to be really strong here on our legs, externally rotating that right thigh so that the knee doesn't cave in, grounding through the back foot. Maybe lifting that arm as you inhale or lengthen, and then exhale to high plank. Exhale, low plank. Inhale, back to high plank, and then we come into Vashisthasana or side plank. So right hand comes to the mat, left arm reaches up towards the sky. We stack the hips. Option to drop the knee to the mat for a modified version. Lifting up through the hips, reaching through the hand, trying to take the weight out of the right wrist. Provide the option to float the left leg. And then we move through a vinyasa. Coming into the crescent lunge series on the second side. So left heel rises, exhale, knee to nose, crescent lunge, rise on an inhale. Whoops. Option to drop the back knee, and this time we twist towards the left. So the right elbow hooks over the left knee. Lengthen through the spine, making sure that the hip points are still square to the front of the room. We also have the option to not bring the elbow to the knee. You can just float the elbow. Arrowhead is the exhale. Hold 3 to 5 breaths. Making sure the palms are facing outward. Dakasana, exhale. Modification is to not lift the heel so high so the foot can just kind of hover off the floor. Warrior two, exhale to land. Inhale, reverse. Side angle, exhale. Option to rest the elbow or float the hands. Really good idea to cue the broadening of the collarbones here so that the heart is open. Inhale, lift the bottom arm, shift forward into high, low, high plank, and then your Vashisthasana side plank on the second side. After holding that for 3 to 5 rounds of breath, usually 3 rounds, pretty good, take a vinyasa. From here, we lift the heels, bend the knees, hop or step, top of mat, halfway lift, and then plant the hands for crow pose. So in crow pose, we want to come onto the balls of the feet, get the hips really high, and then we Bring the knees outside the upper arms and squeeze, hug everything into the midline. Core's engaged. You're doming through the upper back, and then you hinge forward while hugging the legs into the arms. Lift one foot, maybe two. Heels lift towards the groin as you press away from the floor, eventually straightening the arms to come into what's called crane pose. And then on an exhale, you jump back into your chaturanga, or at least you try. You can also step back, downward facing dog. You can also just take malasana, or a squat, instead of crow. That's the modification. We walk to the top of the mat and come into gorilla pose, or padahustasana. Slide the hands underneath the feet, and this allows us to work through the wrists, since we were just on our wrists quite a lot with side plank and crow, and you can use the toes to kind of wiggle out the wrists. So it's a forward fold. And we stay here for about 5 breaths. Halfway lift, inhale, exhale, fold. Option to take a vinyasa. You can see I'm dropping to my knees because I'm getting a bit tired. Inhale, root to rise. Exhale, hands to heart center, finding our Tadasana pose. We move into the standing balances part of the sequence. Inhale, arms rise, Garudasana. Right leg wraps over left, and the right arm wraps under the left. So remember that. Right leg wraps over, right arm wraps under. Always the same side. We hug everything into the midline and then sink the hips back. Option to fold forward. In this pose, if you can't take the bind, then grab opposite shoulders. We unwind and exhale slowly, slowly, slowly into half moon pose. Taking an inhale to lengthen through the arms, kicking through the back of the foot, and you can reach down for the floor or a block. I have a block on the second side. Exhale into warrior two. Inhale, reverse. Take a vinyasa. Coming into this sequence on the second side. Here's where I get the block. Garudasana, left side, left leg wraps over the right, left arm underneath the right arm. Sink the hips back. You can also take an open eagle by just crossing the right leg over the left knee. Transition half moon pose, really expanding and broadening across the heart space. Reaching for that block if you need. Kicking through the back heel, stacking the hips. Maybe looking up. Exhale into warrior two. Inhale, reverse. Vinyasa, high to low plank. Upward dog, downward dog. Travel to the top of the mat. Halfway lift. Fold and then root to rise. Inhale, hands to heart center. Dancer's pose. We begin on the right side. So we bring our, I can't decide here, obviously, I have forgotten. So we begin by grounding down into the left foot. We bring our right hand out to the side, and then we reach back for our right foot, grabbing the inner seam of the foot. So we're not grabbing the outer edge of the foot, we're grabbing the inside of the foot. Kick the right foot into the right hand. And you'll start to notice that as you do that, you're experiencing a little bit of a back bend. Inhale to reach forward with the left hand, which stays between the third eye, and you keep lengthening and kicking back at the same time, finding your balance in dancer's pose. We move into the second side. Reach for the foot. Right arm rises, kick into the foot. Notice that the hips need to stay square to the front of the room, so we're not opening the hips here, which means that our back bend won't be as extreme as we might like. Reach forward and kick back. Reach forward, kick back. We stay here for roughly 5 breaths, but anywhere from 3 to 5 breaths. Longer if you have the time. And then exit. Tree pose. Moving back to the other side, so we're rooting through the left foot, and then the right foot can come to kickstand at the ankle. It can come to rest above the ankle or the inner seam of the upper thigh. We want to avoid the knee. The knee joint does not move laterally, right? So we don't want to press the foot into the knee joint. Staying here for at least 5 breaths, possibly longer. I would say of all the balancing poses, you want to stay a minimum of 5 breaths. And come out, and then we come into tree on the second side. So this time rooting into the right foot, left foot comes into the thigh, into the shin, or at the ankle. And you can express your tree in whatever way you'd like. Arms can rise. Again, 5 breaths or longer. Try to give a lot of space. And by that I mean silence in standing poses, which I'm not doing obviously here, but especially on the second side once you've done all the cueing on the first side. Also try not to move around.
So we vinyasa our way through to the next part of the sequence, which is core. So coming up for boat pose, extending the arms out long, and you've got a couple options for the legs. You can bend at the knees and have the toes touch on the floor. You can bend the knees at 90 degrees or extend the legs all the way up. And then we move from high boat to low boat, high boat, low boat, high boat, low boat, back to high boat, low boat. We repeat this sequence as many times as you'd like, but at least 5 rounds. We come into canoe, slapping the thighs, small movements, rocking back and forth, and then release. From here, we come into wipers, bringing the knees once again to a 90-degree angle or straightening the legs overhead. And then we use the obliques or the side body to drop the knees from side to side. We inhale as the knees come up, and then we exhale as they drop to the floor. Inhale to rise, exhale to drop. And we take about 5 rounds of wipers, finishing with the legs overhead. And then we'll release the feet to the floor when you're finished. Might like to draw the knees into the chest, take a couple rock and rolls. Making our way to a downward facing dog. Option to roll through a vinyasa, coming into the next part of the sequence, back bends. Starting with locust, arms down by the sides, and on inhale we lift the shoulders, arms reach back, heels lift. We inhale to lift, exhale to hold and lengthen, holding for at least 5 rounds of breath. And we release, coming into floor bow, reaching back for the ankles. Shoulders are externally rotated, and we lift on an inhale. We press the feet up towards the ceiling, kicking the feet into the hands into the feet, shoulders draw back, chest lifts, heart's bright. Don't forget to breathe. Inhale to lift, exhale, hold. Around 5 rounds of breath, and then release. Option to wipe the knees from side to side or the feet from side to side. Then we're going to make our way up onto our knees for camel pose. And so we did a little workshop on camel pose in terms of getting back, placing the hands on the lower part of the spine, and then engaging through the quads and leaning back to see if we've got the ability to use our anterior strength to get us back upright. If we don't, then we might just want to practice this, moving backwards and forwards. When you move back, close enough to reach the heels, hands reach the heels, and then we press the hips forward, making sure that we maintain that connection with the heels. Keep pressing the hips forward. Shoulder blades draw together, heart lifts. Try not to crunch in the neck. And then to release, we come back to that plank and use the quad strength to bring us back upright. Holding that camel for about 5 rounds of breath. You might like to just sit and release. And then making your way onto your back for bridge pose. Option here for supported bridge, placing a block under the sacrum. Otherwise, your heels come in towards the glutes so that fingertips can more or less scrape the heels. Draw on through the belly, flatten the sacrum to the floor before you lift, lifting with the abs engaged. Option to shimmy the shoulder blades together, bringing the hands underneath the clasp, and then staying here for at least 5 rounds of breath. As we release, upper, middle, lower spine, lowers to the mat, and then bringing the legs into a resting pose. So either knees wide, feet to touch, or knees together, feet wide. So butterfly or pyramid. You might like to take another round of bridge, or we'll come into wheel. Arms come behind the shoulders, fingers facing the shoulders. Rooting again through the sacrum to engage the abs. And then on an inhale, we press up, really using the feet here to try and straighten the legs. And the heart works through the gateway of the shoulders. So pressing into the hands, pressing into the feet. Here for a few more rounds of breath. And then as you lower, it can be nice to come to the top of the head first or the shoulders, middle, lower back. Once again, taking a rebound, but a neutral posture for the spine. So try not to draw the knees immediately into the chest if you can avoid it. Just allow the spine to relax first in a neutral posture, and then you can bring the knees into the chest after a few breaths. From here, we come into inversions. So options here are shoulder stand, walking the hands midway up the back, elbows coming close together, and we work to stack our hips, knees, and ankles. Another option is to come into waterfall, placing a block under the sacrum. If you don't have a block, use 2 fists. Legs up towards the wall. And if you're in shoulder stand, you might like to drop the legs behind you for plow. Not releasing the hands until the feet touch the floor to support you, and bending at the knees if you'd like, around the ears for deaf man's pose. Holding this for around 5 rounds of breath, slowly coming out when you're ready. So I'm just turning side on so that you're able to see where we're going here into fish pose, which is a nice counter pose for those inversions. Sliding the hands up underneath the bum or along the side body, but most importantly, coming up onto the elbows. So come up onto the elbows high enough so that the crown of the head can come to the floor. And then option for 3 rounds of lion's breath. So in total, you might stay in fish pose for around 5 rounds of breath, might be slightly more. From here, we make our way to a downward facing dog. We scorpion open the leg, starting with the right side, coming into the hip opening sequence, part of the sequence. So we come into pigeon pose, right knee comes forward, so just behind and inside the right wrist. Bringing the knee a little wider if that's uncomfortable on the hips. Left leg extends behind, lengthen out of the waist, and then come to the floor. Another option is to take pigeon on your back, crossing the right ankle over the left knee, and then reaching through to bring the knees close to the chest. Looking to get a nice stretch on the outside of the right hip. You might also feel this in the hip flexors or other parts of the body. After 5 rounds of breath at least, probably will be a few more, we bring the back leg around to wrap over the bottom leg. So left leg wraps around, coming into a seated twist. Holding this seated twist for roughly 5 rounds of breath. From here, we come into Gomukhasana. We stack the knees, so you might need to shimmy the hips up a little bit. And then an option for cow face arms. So we externally rotate the bottom arm to reach up the back, and then we internally rotate the upper arm to reach behind. Option 2, bend forward. And roughly 5 rounds of breath. Undoing the legs. You might like to wipe them side to side. And then moving through a downward facing dog. Scorpioning that leg if you did so on the first side, coming into pigeon on the left side. Just making sure you lengthen out of the waist before you fold forward, just looking after that lower back. Roughly 5 rounds of breath. Doing the same thing we did on the second side, so we lean off over to the left, bring that right leg around, finding a seated twist. After about 5 breaths, Gomukhasana. We shimmy the hips forward a little bit just to stack the knees. You might sit on a block. And then finding the arm bind. You can see that I take the side, once again, my unpreferred side. So for me, I like to have the knee that's stacked. I like the opposite arm to be on top. So what you're seeing now is sort of my unpreferred variation. It doesn't make it wrong. I just feel a lot more rooted when the opposite arm, which I'm about to switch, I think, when the opposite arm is overhead. Okay, maybe not. Undoing the legs, swipe side to side. Opening to a straddle, engaging through the feet if you want to really work the inner seams of the thighs. We inhale to lengthen, we exhale to fold forward. Here again, at least 5 rounds of breath, if not more. Coming out of our straddle, and we draw the heels together, spinning towards the front of the mat once again for a forward fold. Arms inhale overhead, exhale leading with the chest, forward fold. Again, minimum 5 breaths. Engaging through the abs to inhale, and then we come on to our back. So once again, engaging through the abs to lower. From here, we come into our final relaxation part of the sequence, beginning with a supine twist. Right leg can bend into the chest, shift the hips over to the right, and then the knee drops to the left. Another option would be both knees into the chest, shifting the hips before you drop them over the opposite side, or twisted roots where the right leg wraps around the left to then twist. 5 rounds of breath at minimum. You might like to take wipers or knees to chest in between sides. And when you're ready, coming into the second side. Again, minimum 5 breaths. And then once again, bringing your legs back to center, coming into our second to last posture, happy baby. So you can reach for the insides or the outside of the feet. And we kind of draw the knees down towards the floor or the armpits, lengthening through the spine. Sacrum tries to flatten to the mat. And you might like to extend one leg, then the other. Just having a little play here. Minimum 5 breaths. And then an offering to take any final stretches, movements, or shapes that you need before coming into your final resting pose, Shavasana. Resting for a minimum 3 minutes, maximum as long as you've got.